And welcome to Onkwarihwa'shon television as we talk about Kahnawake laws, the community decision-making process, and some of the developments that are going on that in the community. On this program, we'll have a couple of guests. Joining us in a little while will be Gahande Horn-Miller, who is the coordinator of the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Commission. But before that, a first-time guest on the program is Roseanne Morris. She is the new registrar for the membership department, a very challenging job. She spent several years from 1997 onward with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake working on files such as the Seigneurie of Sault Ste. Louis and also the Canada-Kahnawake Relations file, all very political, all hard work, and all working behind the scenes. So she doesn't actually get to do this very often. This is one of the few times that you've been in front of the camera, and we welcome you, and we're glad that you could join us, Roseanne. We'll start with this job, membership registrar. You've been working the political side for a while. This is still political, but what motivated you to take on such a challenging file?
Well, I had spent a number of years working for the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, and especially the Office of the Council of Chiefs, so I felt that I needed a change and start working on some other areas. Mm-hmm. And
but membership, that's a hot one for a lot of people. It's a hot potato. It's always in the news. There's always there seems to be a lot of controversy at times. The registrar's job, what's it been like? You got there in October. I think it was October 11th you first started on the job. What's it been like so far?
A lot of reading. I really had to get caught up on the development of the Kahnawake membership law, review of the different studies that have been done on the law, the reviews, how the membership law, since it was passed in 2003 and implemented in 2004, then in 2007 the Council of Elders was suspended. So there has been no applications that have been processed since 2007. And now we're talking about the law going through the community decision-making process. So we're getting packages ready and information ready for those community hearings.
Mm-hmm. Now, this process actually started before you were on board. And last year there were some hearings that were held. There were some surveys that were done, reports given, et cetera, et cetera. So the process is actually underway. What can you tell us so far about what you've seen and where we're at?
Well, a number of clarifications and amendments have been identified for the membership law. When the Council of Elders and the Council of Chiefs agreed to suspend the Council of Elders, they decided then that there were a number of flaws in the membership law, and that law really needed to be reviewed and be amended to be able to implement the way the membership law was meant to be.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a learning process all the way around. I remember as the discussions were going on, and I think we've talked about it on this program before, whereas the spirit of the law sometimes isn't exactly what comes out, and really these days you have to have it in black and white in order to move forward, and it's very difficult to move forward when you don't have the proper legislation or the proper wording. We're running into that now. Your job, as we said, and we'll get into the law part in a moment, but just for those who are watching on a different side of things here, you're talking about processing people who are eligible for services, and since 2007 there's been a hold. What does that mean?
It's children born to two members. They're automatically eligible to be members, and they are automatically registered. But where it's a person who has only one parent who's a member, and possibly the other parents of another Iroquoian lineage, they have to apply, and it's under the law, it's the Council of Elders who decide whether or not someone meets that membership criteria, and that is what's been on hold. It's the applications for membership.
So basically, in most of these cases, I imagine they should almost be automatic, but because by law the Council of Elders is supposed to do it. If there's no Council of Elders in operation, we have a problem. Is that the real impetus for the amendments to the law, or is there more to it?
I think there's more to it. To start with, when the Council of Elders were suspended in 2007, the intention was to bring it to the community to review and amend the law, but that's gone on now for 4 years. In that time, it's clear that there were some definitions that were not clear in the membership law, and there was also some areas that it was just flawed. It should have been much more clearly written. So those are the kind of things that need to be reviewed. But under the community decision-making process, it'll be up to the community if they want to look at section-by-section review of the membership law, or if they want to just take a wholesale review of membership.
Mm-hmm. In other words, we're in for some rolling up of the sleeves coming up within the next little while. All right, the first part was done. Some hearings, some reports given, some surveys done. Where do we stand right now? Now that you've had a chance now to get your feet wet and read and continue to read. So now what happens in terms of this law? We've talked about it, but now we can kind of maybe give the community a better indication of how close we are to moving forward, or what is the next step?
We are putting together an information package for the community, and once the announcement is made as to when the hearings will start, we'll also make available packages of information, probably through the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, but also be on the websites where people can look at the documents, review it, so that they have all of the background on the membership law, the previous custom code, the previous moratorium, and also look at some of the reviews that were done about the membership law.
Has there been any indication of what the community is asking for at this point?
From the survey that was completed in 2010, the kind of questions that were asked about the different sections of the membership law, the majority of the response seemed to be they don't want major changes. They would just like things to be clarified and get to the processing of applications for membership.
But that could change in the hearings.
Yes.
Yeah, so again, surveys are one thing, but things could change, again, depending on who gets there. What about some of the things that have been clearly identified as needing change? What can you tell us about those?
Well, a few that were identified that if amendments were made to clarify certain things in the membership law, we might be able to move along the application process more quickly. One of them is the definition of what a great-grandparent would be. And in the membership law now, it doesn't say anything about a percentage of blood quantum required by those great-grandparents. So they could amend section 11.5 to clarify that, or they could add a definition in definition section about great-grandparents. There was indications that maybe the size of the Council of Elders should be less numbers, and set level of qualifications for people to be appointed to Council of Elders.
I know there was also an issue, for some anyway, that the way that the law is written, it's a lifetime appointment. And sometimes that makes things a little difficult.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that'll be looked at. How about the reports themselves? The report that came out on the Council of Elders and the suspension of that, there was a report done, and the membership law itself. Those are the reports available, or is that part of the packages that you're looking at?
It is going to be part of the package, but they were already made available on the MCK website. It was the 2007 Social Development Unit review of membership, and then in 2008, the ODS prepared a review of the operation of the Council of Elders.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just have a couple of moments left. Is there anything else I neglected to ask, or anything you'd like to add before we close up?
I think it's just the encouraging community members to come out and participate in the community decision-making hearings. We really need as many people as possible to give their views of who should be a member, what's the process that should be used to recognize individuals as members of Kahnawake.
All right, well, thanks so much for taking time. I know it's a challenging job. I wish you success there, and hopefully we will have some forward movement in 2012. Roseanne Morris is the registrar, the membership registrar with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. We'll be back with more on Onkwarihwa'shon television. Stay with us.
What do these words have in common?
Conjugal violence,
wife beating,
Spousal abuse,
name calling,
isolation from family and friends,
elder abuse,
child abuse and neglect.
bullying.
They are all a breaking of trust.
Break the cycle of silence, not the trust of your loved ones.
Skana Zundu can help. A program for community members by community members.
Skana Zundu, planting the seeds of peace for our future generations. Visit GanawageADR.com.
Welcome back to Onkwarihwa'shon television. I'm Joe Delaronde, and joining us for the second half of the program is someone who's been on recently. Gahanda Horn-Miller is the coordinator of the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Commission. That fancy title with the long name, the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Commission. It's one of those that we have and we have to work with, but really it describes what we do, what it is that we do, and you know, it's I'm sure been a bit of a challenge for you so far. Just let's talk about what it's been like so far, very briefly, for you now being in this job for a little over a couple of months.
Well, I have to say that in my previous job, I worked in human resources for the council, and moving over into this new position with the KLCC has been, in a sense, rewarding. It's forcing me to use my brain in a way that I have used it in my studies, and it's challenging. But it's also, I feel very much as though I'm working for the community, and it's actually, in that way, it's very rewarding. So, and it's been a huge learning curve for me to learn about the process itself. But I can see as I'm going along that how valuable it is and how important it is for community to participate.
Speaking of participation, one of the things that Roseanne said in the first half of the program was about participation. She says, I hope that a lot of people come out. Recently, there was the second reading of the sanitary conditions law for the proposed changes to that for regulations. And the second reading was very sparsely attended. Basically, you had 6 or 7 community members along with the various technicians and council chiefs and portfolio chiefs and et cetera, et cetera. Tell us about what you're seeing in terms of so far. You've heard about the first group of hearings about justice, where it started off with about 100 people and it whittles down. And then in these hearings, less so. Are you concerned about community participation, or is there a plan to look at finding more creative ways to get people out there?
Well, actually, if you recall the last time we spoke, I said that would be one of my main challenges, is to get community to participate in this process. I believe, as I said before, that with educating the community on the values and the merits of the process itself and how they can be a participant in it, and also their responsibility to participate in it. With that knowledge and that understanding would come more participation.
Mm-hmm. Is it also one of those things where when people aren't excited about something that, well, it's pretty hard to get excited about sanitary conditions law if it's not affecting me, and there has to be a little of that.
I think that when we see the other laws come up to community hearings, that such as membership, such as the Justice Act, we're going to have more participants. I think people who participate so far, who have participated so far, it's been a small minority of the community. And I think that in a lot of ways, for example, the sanitary conditions law directly affects a small minority of the community, although it does affect us as a whole in terms of the environmental impacts.
I guess if one of the amendments being proposed was to say, let's allow nuclear shipping and allow nuclear waste, those hearings probably would have been filled up and you'd have to get a bigger hall.
Absolutely. But I always say that, in looking back to how this process, the community, the consensus-based decision-making was used a long time ago by our ancestors, I think that in those cases, when it was utilized, that it was direct stakeholders that participated, but they had the mindset that is required to participate, in that the mindset is that you think of what is best for the community as a whole, and you are there representing the minds and the people of your community, so that when you participate in any decision making, that you're thinking, okay, what is good for my community? And when people send you to participate, your family members, your clan members, that you are going to have their best interests at heart. So there may be fewer people at the gathering and participating in the decision making, but they're thinking in terms of the community at large. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference with today, is a lot of times we think individual. And Canada is constructed, and it's the structures of Canadian society are focused on the needs of the individual. So we've in a way been trained to think like that. Think of what's good for me, not what's good for the community, what's good for my group.
And that's why this process was put in place, to try to at least move back in that direction, but it continues to be a challenge.
Yes, and that's the largest hurdle, is changing the way that we think in how we conduct ourselves, where we think of, okay, what am I doing and how is that impacting the community? We talk a lot about the 7 generations principle and how the things that we do today are going to impact 7 generations down the line. But do we really act that? And a lot of cases you see people do think that way, but it's very difficult to go against the mainstream society, where all of society structures are constructed to reflect that thinking of the individualized thinking, what's good for the individual. All of the laws, the constructs are there. So when we're trying to change the way that the people in our people and think and go back to our traditional community centered thinking, we're kind of in an uphill battle. And I think that's what the challenge is here, is getting people to realize that this process is valuable for the fact that it's meant for the community, and any decisions are going to be made by the community and impact the community as a whole. So when people come to make a decision, come to participate in the community hearings, that they're there to participate in making decisions that are going to impact the community and not just themselves.
Yeah, back in the, I guess it might have been the very first program, we talked about the concept of a person at the hearing represents their family, mm-hmm. and further to that, in the old days, it would have been as part of the clan.
Yes.
And you're actually basically trying to filter as much as you can from the people that you represent, and even further to that, as a member of that clan, then how does that fit in with everybody else? So you're right, it is a bit of a challenge to get people to go back. I know there are people who have been living that philosophy. Mm-hmm. Traditional people have been living that for a long time, but a great many haven't. Yeah. A great many people have seen nothing but the other system over the years. So it really does become a challenge. I have to say, as someone who's been on this commission, that I haven't heard too many people say disparaging things. Most people are pretty happy that council is doing this and handing it off and saying, you guys get this done. The only real comment I keep hearing is that more people need to participate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, what are some of the things you think we need to do to try and light that fire?
Well, we do have one spot that's open, and that's a lot of the reason why I'm here today, is to talk about a community representative on the commission. And I think that that's one place that we can have community representation. In fact, a press release is going to be going out in conjunction with the airing of this broadcast that will invite community members to submit a letter of intent who are interested in participating on a weekly basis in the KLCC.
Mm-hmm. Now, those meetings go on usually once a week. Sometimes sometimes they move to Monday if there's some legislation coming up or work like that. But for the most part, we've discussed the composition of the program in the past, that it is people who are assigned from Mohawk Council operations to, we have a justice representative, a communications representative, which is yours truly, and people working in the operation. But the part that's been missing so far is community representation. So the actual, I guess, legislation or whatever you want to call it that defines who's on the commission is going to be changing very shortly to allow that community person to be on there. So what kind of people are we looking at hoping to have apply?
I think that people who have an idea of what governance is about, have the interests of the community as a whole, and value that, who have some time, an hour and a half a week to 2 hours a week. People who are articulate, have no problem with expressing their views, participating in discussion.
Don't work for the MCK.
Don't work for the MCK.
Because that's always an issue. I mean, there are great people working there, but again, once you work there, there's always the perception in some quarters that, well, you're influenced that way. And that's why we really do hope that we get somebody who is non-affiliated, so to speak.
What I'm hoping to see is someone who can represent the eyes of the community, can represent the voice of the community. That's really needed at the KLCC. I mean, that's not to say that the other KLCC members are not representing the community, but it's also to, in a sense, legitimize the process, the whole KLCC, the whole CDMP, legitimate that in the eyes of the community. And by having a community representative, I think that caters to that.
It's also a bit of a check and balance.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That, there's nothing that's being done behind closed doors, and because basically right now it kind of is. We go up and we have that meeting and we close the door. We put the information out, but again, I guess people are depending on us that this is the information. This way it is a safety valve and a chance for someone who really has that goal of participating in improving our way of making laws.
One thing I'll also say is that I hope that person takes it upon themselves to act as a conduit between the KLCC, between the KLCC and the community, and articulating the value of the CDMP to the community, letting the community know, hey, this is a pretty good process, this is what we have right now, we need more participation. Mm-hmm. And hopefully acting in that capacity as well, become a champion of it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we haven't seen too much of. We hear people, like I said, coming to us, and I've heard it, that they like this, but they're not going to be the one to go on camera saying, yes, this is the stuff. It's basically, people keep a low profile, and it's when you're doing something wrong when you really hear about it. I mean, we had a little slip in the first hearing for the first reading of the sanitary conditions law, where you didn't follow the process that you said you would, and kudos to the community members who pointed that out. We were at fault, fixed it, move forward. And again, I guess that's where you look at in terms of a community participant who could advocate on behalf of the community members.
Bring some new knowledge, bring some other insight into what we're doing in order to make this process better and stronger. Obviously we can't go back to exactly the way that our ancestors did it. We're now in the 21st century. We have to live in this world. So we have to make this process fit and work for what we are today as a community.
And if we don't?
If we don't, then we may go back to, who knows?
God help us.
God help us.
We'll continue doing what we've been doing and beating each other up about the failures of the system. And I guess at that point we could say we have been assimilated. Almost.
I think I want to articulate to people and let the community know that this process is your process. It's something that you have a responsibility to participate in. You can submit a request for amendment to legislation. You can submit a request to make a new law. This is really your process, and I'm not certain that people really fully understand the power of that the community really has a say now in what kind of laws and what kind of changes are going to be made to the laws. And I want to invite you to come and see it. Come talk to me. Come and see what it's all about and participate. This is really your system. This is your time. And
she is the coordinator, and there's no better person to speak to about it than you. You are available.
I'm available.
You work, full days. We talked about this before, whereas Linda Delormier, your president, your predecessor, actually had half days, which made it very difficult for her to really do the job I think she wanted to do. So you have that advantage. You have a little more time to get familiar and with the process and talk to all of the people, but also talk to anybody who wants information. And that's something that I think people don't do enough of. Pick up the phone, and Gahanda is there. She'll answer your questions.
Yeah, I'm available by phone, by email. Come and see me. I'll make time, definitely.
Speaking of time, we still have a few moments left. We can talk about a couple of the other things coming up. The Justice Act is, I would think, very much in the home stretch. We've been talking about this for a long time. But as we speak, there is, I guess, it's down to the last couple of clauses that are being looked at. And by the time this program is airing, I definitely hope that announcements will be made about the actual hearings that will take place and the presentation of a draft, because it is that close. There's other legislation that's in the works. We talked about membership. Some that didn't come up yet are still being worked on. We talked about the anti-tobacco law that was proposed. And of course the work goes on right now about electoral reform. So you're busy juggling a lot of things.
Yeah, I expect that in the new year we'll be seeing, we'll be out in the community more with having more community hearings centered around the different laws that are coming, as we say, down the hopper. Right now, there's a number of laws that are in preparation phase, which is providing the background that's needed for the community to make a good decision. So they're accumulating information, preparing it for community reading, and then so that people can come to the hearings and give an informed opinion, have some information in order to make a good decision on what kind of amendments to be made or changes or things to the law.
All right, well, 2012 promises to be a busy year for you, for us, and hopefully for the community as well as we move forward with legislation in this community. That just about does it for us, so I'd like to thank you, Gahanda, for joining us. Gahanda Horn-Miller is the coordinator of the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Commission, and we hope this program has been useful to you. We'll have another new one coming up in the weeks to come. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Ko adano, oniguwai.
Kanya ke haga thadi adaraste kayerniga hiadu zewaderoru.